Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? So
I'm
good to see
doing
you.
very well. It is lovely to see you too. Good afternoon.
Good
I like
afternoon.
the glasses that you've got on. Nice
Thank
style.
you. They're the ones people often ask. Do they have lens? I do wear prescription, but I didn't get my anti-glare on my actual prescription. So usually I wear these. I haven't put
Ah.
the prescription in there, so no lens. But I love the frame.
They look cute. They look really cute, and I like how they go well with the earrings. I like that flow.
Thank you.
Well, how is it going? How are you doing today?
Today is a little bit better. I actually spent the morning. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably have seen some of my. I try to share some of my nature walks and how I, revamp,
Mm-hmm.
and refuel my soul and my energy. So today's good. I spent at least 2 hours in the sun journaling, getting
Ah.
ready for this new moon that's coming in, the summer solstice, and just really grateful that I was able to do that. What about you? How are you?
I'm doing very well. I did have a bit of a long day yesterday, so I slept in a bit this morning, which I'm thankful for, and I feel really energized. I spent quite some time going through your website, reading about you, watching videos about you, and I'm like, yes, I cannot wait to speak to you. You are so phenomenal. Several things have just sort of sunk into my heart while going through stuff about you. And one of them is the elephant story that you talk about. We're going to get there very soon, but just to level set for our audience, tell me a little bit about Karlyn. Who is Karlyn? What's your journey been like? Who was that person you were that brought you to this person you are now?
Such a loaded question. Who's Karlyn? I say that, Karlyn is uh, on the journey of becoming her. She's on this continuous journey of becoming her, becoming her. And when I say her, I mean that woman who has been destined to do this one thing in this human body while she's on this earth. And where that stems from, it comes from that little girl who grew up. So I was born and raised in St. Lucia in a tiny village called Baslabui. I often say that I have a fairy tale, childhood growing up because I grew up in the bush. I grew up, doing my homework by candlelight, by kerosene lamp, walking to the river to bathe, and I'm pretty sure you probably have the same mother where it doesn't matter if I had to take an hour to walk to catch the bus, which means I had to get up like really early. You still
Yeah.
have to do your chores. So
Yeah.
I gotta go carry water from the river and make sure all of the jerry cans. For those of you who don't know, jerry can is kind of like a bucket, like we have to put water.
Yeah.
Yes, to
A
have the
bucket with
water
the
in there
handle.
with the handle. Yes,
Hmm.
yes. So she's that little girl who really appreciates where she grew up and where she came from. She never forgets where she came from because her parents instilled just so much in her, so much in the sense that where you come from is not who you are or who
Hmm.
you're becoming. And I think that's where the whole elephant story stems from, because growing up, I always had this sense of purpose, of knowing that I was here for something bigger, even if I didn't know what it was.
Hmm.
I had this teacher who lived close to me. She used to check out books for me from the library. So this is where I got my love for reading and teaching. I used to teach, to the birds and the bees and the trees because that's all I had. I didn't have, the childhood where friends came over to play with me or to hang out with me. So my childhood was very isolated, with nature, I guess, if you look at it in the bigger picture. And as I grew older and we moved to a village where we had electricity and we had running water, I went to college and I started my banking career. Because in the islands, in the
Mackin.
Caribbean, in St. Lucia, yeah, there's two jobs. You either have a government job or you work for the bank. Like these were considered to be the top, like jobs that you could have. And we didn't necessarily grow up in a space where entrepreneurship or pursuing your own dreams was like encouraged.
Hmm.
And then I wanted more. Then I moved to Toronto, Canada in 2013, and I continued my career in the financial industry. So I was in the financial industry for 20 years, and a lot of my journey of again becoming her and trying to find her place in the world, that constantly tells us that, hey, you don't belong, or you need to edit yourself, or you need to conform to fit in societal, really, really tiny box of a
Mm-hmm.
definition of a woman. And I constantly like elbowed that box because I don't like boxes. They're confining. I don't like them. So, so that led me to a lot of challenges in the workplace, right? Being a
Yeah.
Black woman on Bay Street, not seeing yourself represented. And Bay Street here in Canada is like the financial industry, like the Wall Street of Toronto.
Right. Okay.
And that led me to started my own company, because then I really got interested in how do I find my place. There are so many elephants, and that's where the elephant story came up. I realized that when I
Yeah.
moved from the Caribbean to Toronto, trying to survive and thrive in a new culture and in a new country with the belief system my parents instilled in me in the Caribbean did not work.
Oh.
No one told, I mean, there are some parts of my value system that still
Mm-hmm.
worked, but when I looked at some value system around work hard, head down, somebody's going to recognize you for it, that did not work. Stay quiet, don't boast about your accomplishments or what
Yeah.
you do, right? I'm pretty sure you can relate,
I can
right?
absolutely relate. I'm an immigrant to the US as well, and these were the same sorts of culture shocks that I experienced. Coming here, especially trying to find your feet in a career, you realize that everything that you thought you knew, you sort of have to unlearn that and become
Exactly.
like a child to figure this thing out. So I can completely relate.
And in that unlearning, shame, helplessness, guilt,
Mm,
fear. And I was confused because I was like, why are those emotions coming up? And I couldn't understand it. I didn't understand it. So that really got me interested in emotional intelligence. Why are my emotions like literally impacting my actions and how I show up,
right.
goals I set, the kind of dreams I have. Why do I have automatic negative thoughts? Where are those thoughts coming from? So that really got me interested in the neuroscience around how the brain works, psychological resilience. So I often tell people I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I was trying to find answers for myself because I was tired of struggling. I was tired. I was tired of struggling. And that led me to, as I went on my journey, I started sharing snippets of it. And I realized that there were a whole lot of people where I work in the bank, lots of immigrants as well, who were struggling as well. And as I shared,
Mm,
some of my learnings, some of my aha moments or things I tried, people just got really, really fascinated. And they're like, can I learn more? Where can I learn more? Do you do
yeah.
talks? Do you do
Yeah.
workshops? And that became the journey of where I am today.
That is beautiful. I find that a lot of people that, make that effort to do the hard work of knowing themselves and figuring out what's going on with them typically find their way. It's almost like it's an accidental thing. You're on one path and that leads to something else that is completely beautiful and you just go ahead and explore it. So that's lovely. So let's talk a little bit about emotional intelligence, right? You mentioned something that is very dear to me. I say to people all the time, try not to make long-term decisions based on your short-term emotions because you are sure to make a mistake. The way that you feel right now is going to change. That's something that you care about as well and you talk about. When you are working with your clients and people who come to you for mentorship and help and support, how do you help them start that journey towards putting a bit of a rein on their emotions? Because emotions can be very intense and they can
Yeah.
push you in ways that you don't even recognize yourself sometimes. So how do you help people figure out those first steps towards controlling their emotions and using their head in those moments?
I start with the basic. I call it emotional intelligence 101. And the most basic learning I want everyone to walk away with is that emotions are data. That's it.
Mm,
Emotions, it's not a directive to act, it's just data. It's giving you information so that you can now make an informed decision about your life,
mm,
right? And I think that was the misconception, and I was there as well. I thought that emotions were bad, you shouldn't feel them, and they'll push you to do something wrong, because no
mm.
one taught me that growing up. At the center of every single decision we make, and at the end of every experience we have, we create an emotional connection or an attachment. So
Right.
yeah, so the first thing is that emotions are data. That's one. So when we do feel that emotion, is to sit with the data and ask yourself, what is that data telling me? Where is it coming from? Does it have some wisdom for me? Or is it telling me that, hey, your values are being violated? right? Or is it telling me that, hey, you need to pay more attention inward right now? I'm sending you some data. And that's the thing I teach my clients. I also tell them that you have an inner operating system. Think of it as your AI. I call it authentic intelligence. The
I
same way
like
the
it.
computer has its own, network. Your computer, maybe you have Windows 11.5. I am 43 today. My inner operating system is I call it at version 4.3. Life will send me information, life will send me people, life will send me opportunities for me to fine tune and update that version. And this is where we
Right.
get into, that person who's irritating you right now in your life, that person who's just very rude and they just don't know how to talk to you, or that person who, quote unquote, is pushing your buttons. These are teachers. Those people are teachers. It's not for you to react and I often say, when you react, you're giving your power away. When you respond, you're now using your emotional intelligence to make an informed decision in your life. So emotions are data, embrace them and use them as a tool to get to know you and understand you better.
I think one key takeaway from what you just said, for me, is we need to differentiate between reacting and responding. A
Yes.
lot of times we just react in the moment, and that's how we fall into mistakes. I
Yes.
love it.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a bit more about emotions and values, but I want us to touch on the elephant story. I kind of have a bit of an idea of what it is. I'm going to try. So that's pretty
Yeah.
much you sitting and trying to figure out what it is, like what your story is, what it is that has formed you, especially emotionally and mentally, to the point where you respond a certain type of way to different sorts of triggers, right?
Yeah.
Am I kind of like on the
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
line?
Yeah. You're on the
Great. I
path.
did my
Yeah. Yes.
research.
Yes, absolutely. So elephant stories, yeah, it's likened after the elephant in the room idiom, which is an unspoken truth, something, think of it as a skeleton in the closet, something that you haven't fully embraced, you haven't fully like healed. And that elephant story is writing in your subconscious and it's driving your internal narrative and also your external outputs as well. So an elephant story is rooted in what we call unpleasant emotions: shame, guilt, fear, helplessness. And if we do not own or face what I call the elephant in the room, then that elephant story will be pushing your goals and your narrative forward. But when you've owned your elephant story, when you've made peace with it, when you have embraced it, then you are making now a more informed decision. Because the great thing about life, not elephant stories, is that life gives us everything we need for the journey ahead. Everything we need. There's no need for us to look outside of ourselves to get answers. We can be inspired by others. We can be inspired by other, stories and individuals. But the answer that you need, you're supposed to take that data back and sit with it and find the clarity, find the things that matter to you the most in that little bubble, and then use that data, that information for you to move forward. So I often tell clients, and if anybody's listening online, if there is, a story that you're struggling with, right? You're riddled with shame or guilt or fear or your inner critic or your ego. People use different language to describe it. It's bringing an opportunity for you or to you towards your door. Know that you are ready to embrace that story, because nothing comes to your consciousness until you're ready to deal with it. I know sometimes we think that when things are coming, it's because, I did something wrong, or I feel like, everything's falling apart. Things are falling apart now because you have everything you need. You are strong enough. You have the resources, the people, in order for you to deal and to navigate that particular thing.
Hearing you talk about this is pulling so many thoughts to mind for me. It's brilliant that you talk about getting inspiration from people. I believe that you can get inspiration from people and you can actually be inspired by yourself. If you take a look at yourself and look at the times when you thrived and you succeeded, you would know that you are able to thrive. And so you just need to sort of reactivate those muscles that you used the first time around. But I find that it's such hard work, it is such hard work to take that look at yourself and look inwards and try to fix it.
Yeah.
How do you get that? A lot of people are lazy. I am lazy sometimes. I journal, but then sometimes knowing what I want to write about just completely mentally exhausts me. And I'm like, yeah, journal, stay in this corner. I'm not going to touch you right now. So how do you kind of walk through that, especially just starting?
Mm-hmm.
Starting is the hard part. How do you
Yeah.
get people to that point where they at least start to look inwards?
I'm lazy too. We're all lazy. Why? Because the brain is designed to keep us in our comfort zone. And the
True.
brain is also lazy. Its number one, task is to conserve energy. So
Yes.
anything new, if you're starting something new, you're starting to do the deeper work, you're starting to understand your emotions, your emotional data better, you will get a lot of resistance. So our
Mm-hmm.
conditioned self, meaning our way of being, our way of doing, our way of existing, this is the brain's default. Think of it as its default operating system, because it knows everything. It knows that you probably like your Netflix, you like just sitting on the couch. These are habits that it is used to. So anytime we try to go outside of that comfort zone, you'll get resistance, and you'll find yourself just coming up with 1,000 sexy excuses, a million other things to do, but that one thing. So how I encourage people to get started on the journey is that you have to have a why that is
Yeah.
bigger than your present current self and situation. Like, you have to dream a dream that's bigger, much bigger than who you are and where you are today, and to
Mm-hmm.
use that as your guidepost. And as you build the dream, one of the things that you can get started on is saying, what is that one thing I can do today to help me to get there? Because
Yeah.
it's one thing to dream the dream, right? Now you have to become the woman who will achieve those dreams.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I say, so now you have to create the dream profile for her, the her that will, not the her of yesterday, because the her of yesterday, she's kind of pretty comfortable in her comfort zone. So
Yeah.
so one of the things I do, I create my dream profile, and I say, okay, so she meditates for 10 minutes a day, she journals at least once a day, she makes sure, she drinks all her water. And actually, one of my products I designed called the Success Planner, we have all those different, and I created something called the Habit Tracker, because just like you said,
Okay.
you're right, because the brain
Mm-hmm.
is lazy, the brain will not work on your behalf. You have to condition it, you have to
Mm.
program it to work on your behalf. And the brain is malleable, right? So you have the ability for you to actually program it and tell it what you want, but you have to do that on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
So first identify what are some of those markers of that, or those habits or those traits of that person who will achieve those dreams. Who do you have to become in order for you to achieve those dreams? And then you update that dream profile into your subconscious by writing it out. And then now you start taking the steps. And the habit track is important. If you don't have a success planner, just take a piece of paper and say, for 30 days, I want to practice this one trait that I know that will help me to become that person. And for me, one of those traits was meditation. It took me, from last year, I've been trying to meditate consistently for 30 days. I only did that last month, and I was on a 43-day streak. And then I broke it, because one day I was like, oh, I'll do it later. And then I didn't do it later, and then I broke it. But now I've started again. And that's the thing. If you do fall off, give yourself some grace and just pick it up again and keep going.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
like that you
It's
said
that
that
one
because a
thing.
lot of, yeah, I think people struggle with that. You're striving, even with working out, with everything, you're striving towards something. And then one day you make a mistake, one day you fall off the wagon and you feel like, yeah, it's over. You can never do it again. You can just
Yeah.
pick yourself up and keep it moving.
Keep moving.
I listened to Jordan Peterson. Like, I feel like a lot of people are going to get tired of me talking about him. I listen to him a lot and I read a lot of his content. And there's a book that I'm reading. I think it's the 12 Rules of Life. And there's a part of it where he talks about negotiating with yourself. Like, you literally have to take yourself and put yourself in a chair and then have a negotiation and say, hey, this is what we're working towards. If you do this, this is the way that I will reward you, right? So, what are
Yes.
your thoughts around creating reward systems for yourself to help you work towards your goals and your dream profile?
Oh, absolutely. Because the dream bigger profile starts in the brain, because everything starts in the brain, right? There is a part of the brain, the reward circuitry of the brain. When you actually lay out the rewards, like, if I do this, I will get X, you increase your likelihood of actually achieving that particular thing. So I'm a big proponent of, creating reward systems, or creating a system that will help you or set you up for success. Another thing I encourage people to do is also speak to your inner critic, speak to that person. So identify the habits that will get in the way. So as you negotiate with your future self, also identify what are some of the habits that the bad habits that will get in the way, that will disrupt your dream profile. Be aware of them, and actually create a plan for them. So you can say, hey, if I feel the urge for me to go and watch, binge watch X, reward yourself with, okay, if I get to binge watch, I get to journal at least one sentence. Like,
Right.
and yeah, so don't be so hard on yourself, because the minute we start beating
Mm.
ourselves up, you remove yourself from your dream profile, and now you're operating from a place of scarcity, which makes it harder for you to achieve your dreams and your goals.
I like that you said that. Not being that is something that I struggled with for a while, just being really hard on myself and wanting to do all these things and kicking myself when I couldn't get things done. So I'm happy that you talked about that. Now let's talk a little bit about vulnerability, something that I saw in one of your interviews. You spoke a lot about the power of vulnerability and finding your authentic self. Tell me a bit about your thoughts and your mindset around that.
On my journey of really understanding the power of emotions, I realized that you cannot selectively numb or choose your emotions. The
Mm.
beauty of life is that it gives you an opportunity, because we're human beings and we're so dynamic, we're so versatile. We have the ability for us to ride an entire range of emotions. That's what makes us so amazing.
Yeah.
But on that journey, letting down that wall, because I believe one of the belief systems I had was that you have to protect yourself, against the world. So you have to put up this
Hmm.
wall and make sure that you are protected from the people who might hurt you, the people who are out there to hurt others, etc., etc. And then I realized that the power of vulnerability. Vulnerability is strength. Vulnerability means being open to receive. It means being open. And one of my mentors, Dr. Brene Brown, she talks about soft front and strong back, meaning that you stay
Mm.
open to receive it all. Feel the pain, feel the joy, feel the hurt. We have the capacity and the ability for us to do that. So the power of vulnerability taught me that in order for me to fully experience life and to fully tap into my potential and to fully express myself at the highest of my potential, I have to be vulnerable and to allow all the different emotions to go through. And the minute I did that, oh my gosh, like the entire world looked different. I'm pretty sure you've heard the quote from Wayne Dyer where he says that we see the world not as it is, but as we are, right?
Mm.
So
I
if I'm
love that
in
one.
the world from a limited perspective, because I haven't fully experienced shame, I haven't fully experienced joy because I was running away from it, I haven't fully experienced empathy, right? I haven't fully experienced compassion. When you interact with others, that will be very evident. It'll be evident in the words you choose, how you say it, how you do it, because you cannot give what you don't have.
Mm.
So once I learned that, I'm like, I want to give love to myself and to others. I want to be able to respond to the hard things. I want to be human in my interactions. I want to embody what it means to be, compassionate and to be empathetic. But if I had this wall up because I thought vulnerability, it's weakness, then I wouldn't fully be able to experience those emotions fully. So yeah, vulnerability became a huge, and it was hard. It's hard because the minute you let your guard down, right, there is that belief that, but if I open up myself fully, what if that person hurt me or that person take advantage of me? And those people there will be those people. But I
But
think
what do you do when that happens? What do you do when you're taken advantage of in your vulnerable state? You completely trust a person, and that person literally takes the trust that you put in their hands and
yeah,
throws it at you in a very painful way.
yeah, I've been there countless times, countless times. The immediate instinct, honestly, is to shut down and to shut everybody out. And to take that one example from that person who was, emotionally constipated and paint the entire no, it's true, because hurt people,
True.
right? um if I am not aware, and that's the first pillar of emotional intelligence, or a sign of an emotionally intelligent person, they're very highly aware of their actions and their behavior, and they are able to pivot in the moment when they are about to inflict hurt or pain onto someone. So when people have hurt me, what I've learned to do is to understand that they are coming from a place of pain, and actually it's a cry for love. So I put up my boundaries. I ensure that I create an environment where I don't allow that person to consistently come back and hurt me, but I just send that person off with love. I forgive myself for the role that I played in it. I give myself permission to mourn what I thought the friendship or the interaction could have been. And then I allow the person to continue on their journey, because the person is not at a place where they can give me the compassion and the empathy that I seek. Because I want to build friendships and relationships where I can be human. I can fall, I can fail, but you'll come pick me back up with love. You will nudge me with love. You will give me, the strong talk with love. But
Yeah.
if that person is violating your boundaries and your values, and they're being mean to you, and they're rude, and they violate your trust over and over again,
Mm.
time for you to not necessarily, don't put up a wall, but what I say is to restate your values to that person by exiting the relationship. Because we teach people how to treat us based on what we accept and allow in our lives.
Yeah.
If I consistently allow you to come into my life with dirty feet, with dirty shoes, and I don't give you feedback and say, actually, you know what?
Dirty
I
feet don't
re-
work.
yeah, it don't work. My house is sacred, right? My house is sacred. So I cannot allow you to walk through my life, my mind, with dirty feet. If I don't give you that feedback, Tobe, what would you do? You'll continue walking through my house with dirty
Right.
feet,
Yeah.
because I did not tell you that that matters to me. So I think
Right.
it's a responsibility on the individual to communicate what your values are and how you want people to treat you. And we do that through feedback, by communicating with the person. And of course, the person might be in a place where they're not ready to receive that, because everyone is
Yeah.
on a different part of the journey.
Because that would be a hard conversation, especially
It is.
depending on the sort of relationship that it is. I
Yes.
mean, I am originally Nigerian. There are conversations that are difficult to have with anyone who is 2 years older than you are, just because of the elder structure that we have from my country, right? So how do you manage those conversations when you consider culture, when you consider just whatever it is? It could be your boss, it could be your husband, your wife, your child. How do you manage it to make sure, well, at least to give yourself the best odds, right, at having positive feedback and having a relationship that thrives after the hard conversation?
So I say the first thing is release attachment to the outcome, right?
Mm.
So, and I've done it in the past, right? In terms of having difficult conversations, I have the conversation, but I also want the person to receive it in a certain way. So I put a lot of pressure on myself to ensure that, okay, I want to make sure that she's going to be happy. I'm going to make sure that the person receives this in a certain way. That is not your responsibility, because every interaction we have, every opportunity we have to have a brave conversation with someone, it not only changes you, it changes the person as well.
Right.
But you might not get the response you're seeking for in the moment, because we all have our own way of processing information. So you might tell the person, the immediate reaction might be to lash back out at you, or don't say anything, or the person might accuse you of not being a good friend or a good family member, because you're now disrupting, the whole family, intergenerational, how we do things, right? But what I say to that is that when I look at my younger nieces and nephews, I have a responsibility to model what healthy communication and love looks like in my family and outside of my family.
Mm-hmm.
For me, my responsibility is to help them to know that it's okay to have hard conversations, because I don't want
Right.
them to be in a situation where they're struggling or they're suffering and then they don't know how to have the conversation. Some of the hard conversations I've had in my family, outside of my family, has resulted in people not talking to me for months, for weeks, for years. And I am okay with that, because I honored my values and I modeled behavior that I know that will help me to continue to grow as a human being, because I want to leave this world with more empathy and compassion than I found it. And it starts with me. Charity begins at home. So
That
as
is
much as it's
beautiful.
hard
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, especially in our families, and I totally get it. I totally know what you're talking about, because when I shared one of my biggest elephant stories on Own Canada, a lot of family members stopped talking to me. But the
Oh,
culture
wow.
of, and for those who haven't seen the elephant story, I shared my story being a survivor of child sexual abuse. And for years, I hid that story. Talk about an elephant story. I hid that elephant story under
That's a
the
heavy
rug.
one.
It's a huge one, but it's also very rampant in the Caribbean and in our Black community and generally in the world. So for me, when I was called to share that story, I knew that there were some people who wouldn't talk to me, and that's okay, because I wanted to make sure that I honored the little girl who went through this traumatic experience, little Karlyn. I owed it to her to show her what it means to fight for her as an adult. I think in today's world and society, using fear or saying that we're afraid people will not talk to us as the reason why we don't live and speak our truth, we can't do that. It's a cop out. We have a responsibility to live this world better than we found it. And if you have been through a certain journey in your life that has equipped you with an elephant story that you know that you were chosen for, and you feel called to do something with it on a bigger scale, or share it in a certain way, I urge you to honor that, sit with that, and see, what is that telling me? Because there are few of us who are called to play a bigger role in this life, and we have a responsibility to do that. So for me, I see it as releasing your attachment to how you think the person will respond. If the person projects their hurt onto you, again, this is why it's important for you to build up. And I wanted to say at the beginning, there are 3 C's I want everyone to embody and embrace as you move forward: curiosity, courage, and compassion. Because if that person also now, they project their hurt onto you, because now you've told them something, now they're triggered. So now they're going through their own inner pain. So they will now lash on that pain on you, unless they're emotionally intelligent enough where they can recognize it. Oh, Tobe said X, Karlyn said this. You know what? I'm feeling something coming up. Let me sit with it. Let me journal. Let me use my, maybe speak to my therapist or speak to my coach, find your healing path. If the person have that capacity, they will do that. But the average person most likely do not, and they might lash onto you. Again, understanding that people's projection, it's a reflection of the inner world, and it's not about you, can help create some space so that you can now extend that compassion to them as they go through their process.
Hearing you speak about this, it's so beautiful that it's just pulling together so many different thoughts at the back of my mind. But the one thing that just keeps echoing is that is a lot of work, and a lot of people just don't know how to do it, because I have had some conversations that have not been very comfortable with friends, with people I've been in relationships with, and hearing you, I'm playing out situations where I was the person who had the hurt that was being projected, and I was the person who was rejecting this very calm feedback that I ought to have used to do something better. And I'm also playing back scenarios where I was the calm person, and I was the one who was giving that feedback, and then I was completely thrown off by the response that I gathered, because I guess maybe I was attached to the response to the feedback. I was maybe more attached to that than the feedback I was giving myself. So that is a significant amount of work, learning to just take the elephant really and drop it and then walk away.
Yeah. But you're not walking away, because in an essence, if you decide to own the elephant, you're now inviting more compassion and empathy into your life.
Mm-hmm.
When we own an elephant, like, for example, when I owned the elephant story and I listened to my inner guidance system, and I was told that your responsibility is to share that story. And I kid you not, when I thought of sharing that story, I'm like, okay, I don't know where to start. The answer came to me. Somebody sent me an email. And then, the information just kept on coming. So that's the other thing. When you are guided to do something, the answers will come, the support will come. You don't have to go and look for it. It's
The world opens up.
the world opens up for you. So if you are, and as you were reflecting, and if anybody's reflecting right now, and you were that person who were projecting the hurt on the person, and right now you might feel some emotions are coming up, honor that. Write a letter of forgiveness to yourself. Write a letter of forgiveness to the person,
Hmm.
because you did your best in that moment. If that was your best in that moment, that's okay. Give yourself some grace. And now we can build a capacity for us to extend that compassion to another person. But you have to give that compassion to yourself first.
I like that you mentioned the letter of forgiveness, because I was going to talk about forgiveness. A couple of months ago, I started this journey of actually learning how to forgive, because sometimes we say, oh, yeah, we've forgiven a person. But then what we've done is just we've postponed the wrath to a different time. We're like, I'm not going
Yeah.
to think about you now, but sometime in the future, when I'm telling someone about you, I will expose all the wrath and vile I feel towards you. So, how do you learn to forgive, forgiving other people, and particularly forgiving yourself?
So here's the thing I learned on my journey to, so one of the programs I designed is called 21 Days of Self-Love, because I had to
Mm-hmm.
find my way back to Karlyn. And the chapter that I wrote on forgiveness, when I was, diving through my work and really understanding what does it mean to forgive myself or to forgive the perpetrator, the person who did the hurt to me, I learned that the misconception I had, I thought forgiveness was something you give to others. Forgiveness is something you give to yourself first. And after you give it to self, then you can give it to others. The very first person who deserves forgiveness in the exchange or in the relationship, it doesn't matter if you were the one who did it or the person did it. No assigning of blame here. But the very first act is forgiving yourself for the role that you played in there.
Hmm.
I saw this quote from, I can't remember the name of the author right now, but he said that forgiveness is the final form of love.
I like it.
Right?
Forgiveness is the final form of
Is the
love. I
final
like
form
it.
of love. Because when you're able to look at yourself and forgive yourself for the role that you played in the current situation, you now have more clarity. You can see where you allowed the person to violate your boundaries. You can see where you allowed that person to overstep or to not honor your boundaries. You start seeing the patterns. And that's
Yeah.
forgiveness, because you're not hating on yourself, going out, Karlyn,
Right.
I've done better,
Yeah.
and we're blaming, and then we just keep on taking that knife and we're cutting ourselves. When you stop cutting yourself, you can now begin the process of seeing, how big of a bandage do I need?
Yeah.
What kind of balm do I need? What kind of healing do I need? So you have to step away from the self-blame and begin the journey of forgiveness by first forgiving yourself. And as you forgive yourself, you get clarity around the role that you played. So now when you are ready to extend that forgiveness to the person, it's coming from a place of genuine, authentic, sincere. You have clarity around the role that you played. So when you say, please forgive me or whatever, you are also owning part of that forgiveness is centering the hurt and the pain of the person as well, because you've done that for yourself. I don't know if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. One of my mentors from a few years ago used to tell me, well, he told me, and I say it to a lot of other people as well, is as long as there are two people in a situation, both of them are culpable. If you were there, even if you're the person who felt the pain, you were culpable. You did something. So
Yes.
take a step back and figure out what it is that you did and what it is that you could have done better to
Yeah.
avoid that situation in general.
Yeah.
And then you would be able to literally take the log out of your eye before you can take the speck out of someone else's eye. that
Exactly. And
that sounds
acknowledging
good.
that is not saying you're not signed in a I am a bad person warrant.
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledging that is that you're acknowledging your humanity. You're flawed.
Yeah.
You're flawed. We don't have
Yeah.
to fix anything, but we are flawed in understanding that the universe, life will give us opportunities for us to work on our empathy and our curiosity, right? That is the beauty of life. Life will always send us exactly what we need in the moment we need it the most. And if we're paying attention to the signs that life is sending us, you'll realize how perfect your life is, because you're getting everything you need,
Yeah.
right? Even if
I
it's
like
it's
it.
even if it's this, even if it's disruptive, you're building. You're either building on your strengths, you're building on your compassion, you're building your empathy. I'm pretty sure you heard the quote, I asked God, to give me love, and then he sent me the most disagreeable and most annoying person on this planet. Because how else can you learn love? Can you see the goodness in
Right.
someone when they're not being good to you? This is the true test of love, right? Not in the, oh, everything's great. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
everybody's lovable when they're being agreeable with us. Everybody, right? But can you love someone when they're sitting in the mess and they're being mean to you, or they're not being good to you, or whatever
Yeah.
it might be? Can you still practice love? Can you still practice empathy? Can you still practice compassion? Again, all of these are core tenets of being an emotionally intelligent human being. And this is why emotional intelligence is a muscle, it's a skill, and
It
we
is a
get to
muscle.
build on it every
Mm-hmm.
single day. But if you keep avoiding the lessons life sends you, then you're also avoiding your growth, your grace, and your ability for you to tap into your true potential.
That is also beautiful. I like the way that you talk about love in, that testing. Because, I mean, like you said, it is easy to love when everything is beautiful, but then when things get hard, that's when you truly know the compassion that you have. Let's talk a bit about this period. It is a hard period for everyone all around the world. People
Yes.
are struggling with different things. Some people are not able to cope. Some people are able to cope just barely. Other people have taken this pain and turned it into, I've heard reports of people having to deal with violent situations at home, and it's not necessarily that the people they're with are violent. It is that they've taken the frustrations that they're not able to figure out, and they're expressing it in a way that is unusual for them. So first of all, two things. How are you coping? And have you got any tricks up your sleeves that other people can, copy or try out to help them figure this out? Because we're in this for the long haul, it seems.
Yeah, we're in this for the long haul. It's a marathon, and this year, and I try to share, like, that's why I try to share my journey as much as I can on Instagram, so people see, and it's not just the, oh, rah rah, let's go, every day is positive. Not necessarily. It's been a hard year.
Yeah.
In addition, with the health pandemic, my father-in-law passed away from cancer.
Okay,
Um,
I'm sorry to hear that.
yeah, thank you. And there's just been a lot. And every single day there's a different wave that I'm riding. And how I cope, I often say that, so emotions are data. Your body is not a container to hold that data. Unrealized emotion turns into pain. So it's important for us to find, I call them containers, find containers for your emotions. And by that, I mean your ability to express your emotions. It's extremely important that you find an outlet. And my outlet, I have different outlets. I have, just like you, I have journaling, I have coloring, I am nature. Like, again, I grew up in nature. So going for a walk, going to the park, going to sit next to the water. I have my little rituals that I do inside because I'm an empath. I'm an intuitive empath. So sometimes going outside freaks me out because I don't want to see people because I can feel everybody's energy. So when I'm at home, I do like my push-ups. I have my daily meditation. So I have different things, sitting in silence sometimes, no external noise. Music is huge for me. And then just connection with family. Our video chats, my family's still in St. Lucia, I have family in Ottawa, in the US. So really making time to connect with family. So these are some of the things that I use. I tell people that you will grieve a lot this year, whether it's an actual lost life. You will also grieve parts of yourself. And actually last year, even before the pandemic, I grieved a part of Karlyn, a version of myself that I realized that will never come to be. So I had to go through the process of mourning her dreams, mourning who I thought she would have been. So for this year, for 2020, I've been encouraging people to grieve. Give yourself permission to feel the loss of this year, what you thought 2020 would have been. Because grief is all about an emotional attachment, right? Grief is
Yeah.
because we make, conscious and unconscious contracts with life, right? We say that if I go to work and if I go to work and I put in X number of hours, your boss will pay you X, right? And now you can use that money to do Y. So it's the same thing with life. We enter 2020 with an intention, with dreams, with goals,
With expectations, right?
expectations, right? So those expectations, they're still in our subconscious. So the brain, because the brain just absorbs everything that we bring to it, it's like a sponge. Our subconscious is like a sponge. It's important for you to now reconcile. I call it like, it's almost like you're reconciling your inner bank account, right? Reconcile those by acknowledging what's not working or what is working. Be quiet with yourself. Like you mentioned earlier, 2020 it will bring all of our patterns and our behaviors to the forefront because we're not moving as we were. Because
Yeah.
business sometimes can hide
Mm-hmm.
the things that we are not
Cognizant of?
that we're not happy with in our lives.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right? So it'll bring a lot of our discomfort to the surface because you're not moving as fast as you used to. So our bodies are also weaning off a lot of the busyness. And as we wean off the busyness, what will come to the surface is opportunities for us to face ourselves in the mirror. So it will be
And that opportunity comes as a shock, right? Because it's not
yeah,
intentional. It just appears and it's like, what do I do with this time? What do I do with this thing in front of me?
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So use this time to grieve and find your different containers, your outlets. Like I said, whether it's music, journaling, speaking to a trusted friend, someone who have earned the right to hear your elephant story, your shame story, your grief story. If you are on the receiving end of the frustration of someone else, find a safe space, whether, you can call a helpline or, again, find a trusted circle that you can speak to find different ways for you to navigate and for you to start that bigger conversation. 2020 can be that year where we really tap deeper into our feminine energy, into our divine higher self, but it requires for us to be courageous. And that curiosity I mentioned, just get curious with the thing up. Don't assign meaning to it or assign it to your identity. Just because you're frustrated doesn't mean you're a frustrated person, right? It just because you're angry doesn't mean you're an angry person. Emotions, it's fluid. It's like a wave, right? It lasts 90 seconds in our bloodstream. And also emotion is a bodily sensation. So pay attention to where in my body am I holding my emotions? Where am I holding my grief? Is it here? Is it in my stomach? Is it in my feet? Is it in my jaw? Right? So use that time for you to get to know, increase your emotional intelligence by getting to understand the process of emotions in your body. This is a very, very important time, but it's a lot. So the more you listen to yourself, the more you'll be able to get, insight into, okay, I need a breather over here. I need to take a step back here. I need to push harder here. I can give you the tools, just like you are in her network online, giving so many tools to everyone who's listening right now. But now you have to take that tool and integrate it in your life in the best way that you know how, because you are the biggest authority on you, not me. But I can give you some guideposts and some suggestions that you can use to integrate to your current practice.
I have a takeaway from what you just said, and it is, do not create an identity around your emotions, right? Your emotions are fleeting, they're going to pass. And then something that you said is really profound. You know how a lot of people tell you, they were so upset they wanted to puke. Hearing you just now talk about how emotions get held in parts of the body, that's probably what it is. Your emotion is just being held in your belly, and your belly is turning over.
Exactly.
That is interesting.
Yes.
Huh.
And the more you tune into that, so let's say the first time you felt it and you wanted to puke and you did puke, you're now given that emotion intelligence, because you're now acknowledging, oh, interesting. This is where it shows up. Okay.
Yeah.
I allowed myself to puke. What are the other outlets for that particular emotion? So let's say it was anger. Okay, because let's say you're at work and you feel anger. You can't now puke at the table there, right? So now, because you honored that one process, now you can find different outlets for your anger. What can that look like? So then you get to honor your emotions anywhere you go. And that's why authenticity and sincerity comes in. So you don't deny yourself. You don't, and Amy Cuddy, she talks about that. When we suppress our emotions, this is the beginning of us not trusting ourselves. And we know it starts in childhood, right? When, we cry and people tell us shut up, or, don't be loud, and, all the conditioning we get around our family upbringing, we carry that with us in our adulthood. So sometimes something that can come up in adulthood, it be coming from your inner child, that is coming from the past. That's why it's important, again, to sit with things. Like, you might say something, but it has nothing to do with what you said. You just triggered an old wound that is now ready for healing. So it's extremely important to again, use the emotional data as a tool to dive in deeper and to understand self better. That's our superpower. We have that ability to do that. How amazing are we as human beings?
Right.
Right?
Okay, like this has been such an exposing conversation for me. I feel very edified talking to you, and I do hope that a lot of people who are tuned in feel the same way. I see quite a number of people. Some people are asking questions about the kind of music that you listen to and the books that you listen to. And so what we like to do with these sessions is we'll take the questions and send them back to you via email. And when you send a response, we'll put it up on the Instagram page, and people can go on there, meet up with you, and interact with you. We've got just about 10 minutes, so I want to do two things. The first thing is I want to talk a little bit about your success journal. In several videos that I watched, that came up, and I was curious about it. If you have like a copy of it that you could show, or just tell us something about it that we could, carry with us from it.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the journey of becoming your best self is a lifetime journey. And every single thing that, we do, it goes through the brain. It goes through, our emotions actually begins in the brain. So when I realized how much unlearning I have to do and how much relearning I have to do and how important it is to actually use the brain, because so the brain uses personal narratives to create a story about who you are and where you're going. So I took all the science behind, how the brain works, the science behind emotions, and I created a journal to help people to really create a plan, because our brain works on systems. If you give it the information in chunks, it will work on your behalf. And again, it increases our capacity for us to meet our goals. So in the success planner, like for example, my theme word this year is trust.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
and actually this anchor, and it really anchors you when you choose a theme word for the year. It anchors you into, you can come back to that particular theme word and to use it to help you, to guide you. There's a vision wall, vision statement. You set your goals for the year, and all of this is part of training your subconscious mind to create the life that you want. The habit track I mentioned. There is a letter to my 2020 self. We
Oh, okay. So you get to write a letter every year, every time.
every year.
That is
We have
beautiful.
self-care suggestions. Yeah, I took because when I looked at how, like you said, it's a lot, right? It's a
It's a
lot,
lot of work, right?
but our brain is designed to do that and much more. So why not tap into our full potential by leveraging the science behind human behavior? So that is what the journal, the plan is all about. And every month we also amplify the voices of Black women and women of color. So we have an original quote from a Black woman, and then a self-identified Indigenous woman, a woman of color in the journal as well. So every month those quotes are original quotes, and you get to also color as well. So we bring in some mindfulness and some self-care. So you also get to color or design every single month the quote that is chosen for that month in question.
That is beautiful. That I feel like that's a really nice tool to help people get started in doing the hard work of getting to know
Yeah, and
themselves
we
and being
and we
centered.
have at the end of the month we have a check-in. So you've been doing all this work. You say that now you're emotionally intelligent or you're more empathetic or whatever it might be. We actually have a section at the back where you go in and you look at, what did I struggle with? What are my time wasters? What is a bright spot, right? Because the brain also does not recognize our positive accomplishments. This is why a lot of women have what I call imposter syndrome moments. I don't
Mm-hmm.
believe in imposter syndrome. We don't have it. I don't assign those things to my identity or who I am as a woman, but we have moments of it because of the brain's negativity bias. So it's important to create a practice for you to deposit the positive things that you do in your life. So this is what the journal is about and how it came about, because I wanted to make sure that I was tapping into my full potential. So I designed it.
There's a book that I read last year. I don't remember the name of it for the life of me, but it did have an analogy about the brain and a bank. If you only have negative reserves, that's all you're ever going to be able to pull out. So you have to be intentional about putting in positive deposits into your brain so that you can have positive experiences to pull out. And it said something about sort of creating the narrative, like even when it is a bad situation, if you are able to create a positive narrative and then build a positive emotional attachment to that experience, it sort of makes it a positive repository in your head. It's interesting how the brain works.
Oh yeah, it is. I'm so fascinated by it, and I'm so excited to dive in more and to learn more, because
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I really love about us, our potential for us to be better humans. We have this potential and we have this capacity within us. And in this current movement we are in right now, I encourage everyone to really tap into their potential, so that we can really rebuild or recreate a just world where all of us can thrive.
It is Father's Day today, and even though it's mostly women that we have on on our channel, there are men as well who tune in. So happy Father's Day to them. What would you say to fathers? What's a lesson that you learned from your father? Something that you believe would resonate with anyone who is a father?
With the fact, so I have two messages. One to women, because I know not every woman have a father in their lives, right? And that causes a lot of pain. So I know Father's Day can be a very triggering day for some people. So to just find however you can cope with today, find that spot, find that space for you to unburden yourself or to honor whatever it is that's coming up for you, whether it's grief, it's pain or shame, whatever it might be. And the second thing I would say is to honor the father figure in your life. So you may not have received the love or the guidance that you need from your immediate father, but if there is a father figure in your life that has given you that, honor that as well, because all of that, it contributes towards that father energy or that male energy in our lives. And to the men out there, to just keep on doing a great job. Our fathers did their best, because I've had different conversations with different people who their father and how their father raised them, and their father's inability to give them love. That's why I love the word emotionally constipation, right? Because a lot of dads are emotionally constipated, right? Because of conditioning and how men are conditioned. So I just want to tell the dads, keep on doing your best. You're doing great. Just keep on doing the work. And for all of the women out there who might be at that place with their dad where don't, just see where they are doing their best, and you get to design the kind of experience you want with your dad. My dad, who is back in St. Lucia, he's a man of very few words. He's an awesome man. I love him. He worked so hard to provide a home and to provide for us to go to school. He worked on the farm every single day. He still goes up to the farm, every single day. And he's an amazing man, and we continue to build our relationship. I often say adulthood is the unfinished business of childhood. So whatever comes up for you today, honor that. And remember that if something comes up for you right now in this moment, it's coming up because you're strong enough to deal with it. So first give yourself that grace, that awareness, that understanding, and just sit in silence, get that clarity, get curious about what is coming up. Use compassion first towards self and extend it to others, and then use courage. Use courage to give you the tools that you need for you to take the action, whether it's reaching out to that person, whether it's closing a relationship, whether it's putting yourself first. Use courage to make the decision that you need to make in your life that will allow you to move forward with confidence and with clarity.
That is so beautiful. Be curious, have compassion, and be courageous. Those are very key takeaways. Thank you so much, Karlyn. It's been really beautiful and edifying talking to you. I'm sure people on here have enjoyed it. And we're going to have this on YouTube, so there might be a lot of questions and comments, and I'm sure we're going to get those to you for feedback and engagement. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.